What if I told you there's a specific moment in your financial life when saving money stops making sense? Not because you're suddenly rich enough to burn cash, not because investing is bad, but because something fundamental shifts. It's subtle, quiet, almost invisible. And unless you're actively looking for it, you'll miss it completely. Most people never talk about it, yet it's the moment that separates those building real wealth from those just going through the motions. Hi, I'm Matt, and on this channel, I break down the financial strategies that actually move the needle, the stuff most people never mention. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button to help others discover this video, and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss future content like this. Here's the reality. There comes a point where the effort you're putting into saving money becomes practically meaningless. Not worthless, meaningless in terms of impact. The same habits that built your wealth in the first place suddenly lose their power. And the crazy part? The math has been screaming this at you for years, but you've been too busy clipping coupons to notice. Think about this. In the beginning, every single dollar you save moves the needle. You watch your account balance creep up from $1,000 to $5,000, then to $20,000, and you feel progress. Each deposit is a small victory. You're in control. You're building something. But fast forward 10 or 15 years, and that same weekly deposit barely registers. Your portfolio is growing on its own, relentlessly, and the effort you're putting in feels almost pointless. The habits that got you here won't get you there. And there is financial freedom, the point where your money works harder than you do. But here's what nobody tells you. Most people never recognize when they've crossed that line. They keep operating like they're still at the starting line, long after they've already won the race. They're still clipping coupons with millions in the bank, still agonizing over $50 decisions while their portfolio swings $50,000 in a single day. Are you still measuring wealth by how much you save? Because that might be the exact mistake keeping you stuck. Let's go back to the beginning. Think about the early days of investing. Every single dollar you put away feels like it counts for something massive. You skip the $20 takeout lunch. You hunt for discount codes. You comparison shop for streaming services. It all adds up. When your portfolio is small, these little wins translate to real, visible progress. You can literally see the difference a $500 deposit makes on your account screen. But here's the thing. As your investments grow, those tiny savings start to feel, well, tiny. Imagine adding drops of water to a fast-flowing river. Your effort still matters technically, but the river itself is carrying most of the power. That's your growing portfolio in action, quietly doing the heavy lifting while you're obsessing over whether to use a $2 coupon. The irony? Many people keep obsessing over these small wins long after they've stopped moving the needle. Hours spent hunting for deals, tracking every subscription, debating whether to buy the generic brand. They could have made far more impact by spending 30 minutes reviewing their asset allocation or rebalancing their portfolio. Those coupons might save them a few $100s a year. A single smart adjustment to their investments could mean thousands. Let me ask you directly, what percentage of your portfolio growth came from your contributions last year? If you have $250,000 invested and you added $10,000 this year, but your portfolio grew by $35,000 thanks to market returns, your contributions only accounted for 29% of your growth. The other 71%, that's compounding, doing what compounding does. And yet, where are you spending your mental energy? Probably still on finding ways to save that extra $10,000. This is where things start to shift, and most people completely miss it. They're still playing the savings game when they should be playing the optimization game. Different rules, different strategies, different mindset entirely. Think about it this way. In the early stages, you're building the foundation. Every brick matters. Every contribution directly translates to portfolio growth because, frankly, there's not much else generating returns. If you have $10,000 invested and you add $5,000 this year, you've increased your portfolio by 50% through sheer effort. That's powerful. That's tangible. That's why the early days feel so motivating. But once you've built up a substantial base, the dynamics completely flip. Your contributions become a smaller and smaller percentage of total growth. The compounding engine takes over. And this is exactly the point where your strategy needs to evolve. But here's what nobody tells you. Most people never make that evolution. They keep doing what worked before, even though the math has fundamentally changed. So at some point, the question shifts. It's no longer, how can I save more money? The real question becomes, how can I make what I've already saved work harder? That's the pivot. That's the wealth tipping point. And if you're not asking that second question, you're leaving massive amounts of money on the table.
Let's talk actual numbers, because this is where it gets crystal clear. Let's say you're just beginning to invest and you set aside $8,400 per year. That's roughly 10% of the median US household income, a reasonable target. In the beginning, your contributions are literally everything. Every deposit feels powerful because it's directly building your foundation. Meanwhile, portfolio returns are basically nothing. Now, let's say you've built up $100,000 in investments. Your $8,400 annual contribution is still meaningful, absolutely, but it's starting to share the spotlight. At a 10% annual return, which is the long-term average of the S&P 500 returns, your $100,000 is generating $10,000 on its own. Your manual contribution of $8,400 is now slightly less than what your investments are earning automatically. Think about that. You're working all year to contribute $8,400, and your money is casually earning $10,000 while you sleep. The early effort still matters. You're still building, but compounding is beginning to take over the driver's seat. Now jump to $500,000 invested. This is where it gets wild. Your annual $8,400 contribution becomes, and I'm not exaggerating, a rounding error. Your portfolio is generating about $50,000 in growth at that same 10% return. Compare that to the $8,400 you're manually adding. Your contributions are now responsible for only 17% of your portfolio growth. The returns on your existing investments are doing 83% of the work. You can literally see how each additional dollar you invest has less and less impact on overall growth. Compounding has become the dominant engine. By the time you've accumulated $1 million in investments, your $8,400 annual contribution barely moves the needle at all. Your portfolio is now generating roughly $100,000 per year in growth, assuming that 10% return holds. Your original contributions, which once felt enormous and powerful, have become almost insignificant compared to the sheer momentum your investments have built up over time. Let me paint this picture differently. Imagine you're at $1 million invested. You decide to cut back your contributions by half, from $8,400 to $4,200 annually. How much does that impact your wealth trajectory? In raw numbers, you're losing $4,200 per year in contributions, but your portfolio is still generating $100,000 in returns. You've reduced your total annual growth from $108,400 to $104,200. That's a 3.9% difference. Barely noticeable. Now, flip it. What if instead of obsessing over contributing that extra $4,200, you spent those hours learning about tax loss harvesting, optimizing your withdrawal rate strategy, or rebalancing into higher performing sectors? A single smart move there could boost your returns by even 1%, which on $1 million portfolio is $10,000, more than double what you'd gain by penny pinching your contributions. This is the point where continuing to pour every spare dollar into your portfolio makes little practical difference. Your wealth is running on its own momentum. This is the wealth tipping point. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Let's bring this into the real world with current data. In 2024, the S&P 500 had significant volatility, but still delivered solid returns for long-term investors. Those who stayed the course saw their portfolios recover and grow despite the noise. As we move through 2025, the market continues demonstrating that time in the market beats timing the market every single time. Investors with substantial portfolios, say $750,000 or more, watch their accounts fluctuate by tens of thousands of dollars in single weeks. Meanwhile, they're stressing about whether to contribute an extra $500 that month. The math doesn't lie. Once compounding takes over, your manual contributions become less and less relevant to your overall trajectory. And yet so many people ignore this reality. They keep grinding, keep sacrificing, keep saving aggressively, long past the point where it makes any practical difference. Would you clip coupons if you had $5 million in the bank? Most people laugh at that question, but the truth is many absolutely would, because they've built an identity around saving money and they can't let it go even when the math screams at them to shift strategies.
So when exactly is the wealth tipping point? When do you cross from every dollar counts to compounding runs the show? The answer isn't a specific number. It's a ratio. It's when your annual investment returns consistently exceed your annual contributions by a meaningful margin. For most people, this happens somewhere between $300,000 and $750,000 in invested assets, depending on their contribution rate. If you're contributing $10,000 per year and your portfolio hits $500,000, you're there. Your returns are now 5x your contributions. The engine has taken over. Here's a simple formula to know if you've hit it. Divide your annual investment returns by your annual contributions. If that number is 3 or higher, you've crossed over. If it's 5 or higher, compounding is dominating. If it's 10 or higher, your contributions are almost irrelevant to your trajectory. Run that calculation right now. But here's what separates the top 5% of wealth builders from everyone else. They recognize this moment and they shift their entire approach. They stop thinking like savers and start thinking like wealth managers. They stop asking, how do I save more, and start asking, how do I optimize what I have? Think of wealth building like pushing a massive boulder up a steep hill. At first, it's grueling. Every inch is earned through sheer effort. You're budgeting, investing carefully, tracking every expense. It's slow. You see progress, but barely. This is the stage where your effort truly matters most. Then something magical happens. If you've been consistent, patient, and disciplined, the boulder finally crests the hill. Suddenly, it starts rolling on its own. Momentum kicks in. You're no longer the one powering the growth. Your money is. And here's the incredible part. Once the boulder reaches the top and begins rolling down the other side, it doesn't just roll, it accelerates, unstoppable, picking up speed with almost a mind of its own. That's exactly how a compounding portfolio works. Your money, carefully saved and invested over years, suddenly starts growing faster and faster, outpacing anything you could realistically add through contributions. Trying to slow it down would take real effort, massive withdrawals, reckless spending, because the momentum is built into the system itself. That's the power of compounding in motion. Unstoppable, self-sustaining, exhilarating. But here's the thing. The boulder only begins rolling if you've pushed it the right way. If you've left cash sitting idle in a checking account earning 0.01% interest, or if you're trapped in ultra-conservative investments because you're too cautious to take calculated risk, you've halted momentum. Your wealth stays stuck at the starting line, never building enough speed to become self-sustaining. But once your investments are properly allocated, diversified across index funds, growth stocks, real estate, or whatever fits your risk tolerance, the growth becomes inevitable. The effort you put in years ago suddenly multiplies. The numbers start rising faster than you can track. You finally see in real time the power of compounding working for you instead of against you. Now think about someone who spent decades building the habit of saving and investing. They're like a gardener tending to a slow-growing orchard. Every day they water the trees, prune branches, pull weeds. At first, the effort seems monumental and directly translates to the tree's well-being. Each seedling requires constant attention. Over time, this care becomes second nature. The gardener doesn't just tend the orchard out of necessity anymore. It's part of who they are. For natural savers, saving is instinct. They budget meticulously, track every expense, hunt for deals, check their portfolio religiously. It's a discipline woven into the fabric of daily life. Even after years of compounding, that instinct doesn't just fade. It's baked into their identity. They've got $2 million in investments, but they'll still comparison shop for toilet paper. Just like some people can't stop spending, others can't stop saving. Their diligence keeps them contributing long after the numbers suggest they could ease up. They keep watering the orchard even though the trees are now towering, bearing fruit on their own. Saving is still worthwhile, technically, but it barely makes a dent. They could step back entirely without losing the growth they've cultivated. How much is your time actually worth per hour? If you're spending 3 hours hunting for deals to save $40, you're valuing your time at $13 per hour. But if your portfolio is generating $80,000 per year in passive returns, your money is earning over $9 per hour, 24/7, without you lifting a finger. Which deserves more of your attention?
Now imagine a couple who's reached the financial milestone they've been chasing for decades. They've lived comfortably on $75,000 per year, dreaming of retirement with $200,000 annually in spending power. They've accumulated $5 million in investments, enough to fund that dream lifestyle using a safe 4% withdrawal rate. By every measure, every calculator, every financial planning metric, they've made it. They've won. But instead of upgrading their lifestyle or enjoying what they've earned, they keep living exactly as they always have. Same modest home they bought 20 years ago. No renovations, no upgrades, even though the kitchen is outdated and the bathrooms need work. Their cars stick around for 15 years, running fine but showing their age. They skip extended vacations, avoid splurging on experiences. never even consider moving into a nicer neighborhood even though they could easily afford it. Their lifestyle remains frozen in time, locked into the habits and routines that built their wealth in the first place. It's not about necessity. They could spend freely. The money is there. But spending it feels unfamiliar, uncomfortable, almost wrong. After decades of disciplined saving and cautious choices, frugality has become their default mode. Their wealth continues growing, their goals are fully met, yet their lifestyle barely budges. All the signals say they could slow down, ease up, enjoy the fruits of their labor, but psychologically, they hesitate. The money's sitting there, growing, compounding, and they hold back, unsure if spending it is truly safe or justified. This is the psychology trap. The same mindset that built the wealth becomes the prison that prevents them from ever using it. Think about the absurdity for a second. They're sacrificing present experiences to save for a future they're already living. They have the resources to travel, to upgrade, to enjoy life, but they're still operating like they're one emergency away from financial ruin. Meanwhile, their portfolio grows by $200,000 per year while they stress over a $500 dinner reservation. When was the last time you reviewed your asset allocation? Not your contributions, not your budget, your actual investment strategy. Because here's the truth. Once you've hit the tipping point, that's where the real leverage lives. A 1% improvement in returns on a $1 million portfolio is $10,000. A 2% improvement is $20,000. You could save every coupon in America and never match that kind of impact. This is where retirement planning and financial independence converge. You're not building wealth anymore. You're managing it, protecting it, optimizing it. The game has changed, but you're still playing by the old rules. Let's talk about what the shift actually looks like. Someone at the tipping point stops obsessing over their monthly contribution amount and starts focusing on tax efficiency. They stop clipping coupons and start tax loss harvesting. They stop hunting for $20 discounts and start evaluating whether their portfolio is properly diversified across asset classes. They stop asking, can I afford this? And start asking, is this the best use of my capital? The mental shift is profound. You go from scarcity mindset to abundance mindset, not because you're reckless, but because the math supports it. Your wealth is momentum. It's growing faster than you can spend it unless you actively try to drain it. At that point, the question isn't, should I save more? The question is, what am I building this wealth for if I never use it? Pause the video for a second and think about your own situation. If you're contributing $10,000 per year, but your portfolio grew by $60,000 last year, are you still optimizing for the right thing? Are you focusing on moving the needle, or are you just going through the familiar motions because it feels safe? Here's the reality. Continuing to save and invest doesn't stop making sense entirely. Your contributions are still valuable. Every extra dollar helps. But as your investments grow, the impact of each additional contribution shrinks. At a certain point, the highest leverage activities shift. Reviewing your portfolio, optimizing allocations, rebalancing strategically, planning for tax-efficient withdrawals in retirement, these become far more impactful than squeezing out an extra $200 per month in savings. Let me give you a real-world scenario. In 2024, inflation moderated significantly compared to the peak levels of 2022 and 2023. The Federal Reserve adjusted interest rates throughout the year, and by 2025, we're seeing a more stable economic environment. Investors who maintain disciplined, diversified portfolios through the volatility are now reaping the rewards. Those with $500,000 or more in investments saw their accounts grow substantially, often by $50,000 to $100,000 or more, depending on asset allocation. Now picture one of these investors. They're still brown bagging lunch to save $8 per day, which adds up to roughly $2,000 per year. Meanwhile, their portfolio just grew by $75,000. They're optimizing for the wrong variable. They're playing checkers while the market is playing chess. The shift isn't about becoming reckless or wasteful. It's about recognizing where your energy creates the most value. It's about understanding that wealth building has phases, and the strategies that work in phase 1 can actually hold you back in phase 3. So there you have it. The wealth tipping point is real. It's the moment when your contributions are dwarfed by compounding returns, when portfolio growth outpaces anything you could manually add. It's when you've surpassed your goals, but you keep grinding anyway because the habit is too ingrained to break. Yet many people ignore every signal screaming at them to shift strategies. They continue amassing wealth they'll never fully utilize, sacrificing present experiences for a future security they've already achieved. They've won the game, but refuse to leave the field. The question isn't whether you should stop saving money entirely. The question is whether you're still optimizing for the right outcome. Are you managing wealth, or are you just accumulating it out of habit? Because once you've crossed the tipping point, the game changes. And if you don't change with it, you risk winning the battle, but losing the war. In the next 60 seconds, do this. Calculate what percentage of your portfolio growth last year came from contributions versus returns. If contributions were less than 25%, you've crossed the tipping point. It's time to shift your strategy, your mindset,
and your relationship with money, because continuing to play the old game won't get you where you actually want to go. The bottom line, the day saving becomes stupid isn't when you're rich, it's when compounding becomes unstoppable. And for most people, that day arrived years ago. They just never noticed.